All right, this is the HTML All Things Web News. This week, we're going to be discussing a topical Twitter post. So someone posted on Twitter about something called a 10x engineer, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this because it kind of went viral. It has thousands of likes, that over 1,000 retweets, and then people have made subsequent posts about it on Twitter and talking about what a 10x engineer is. But essentially, what from what I understand, a 10x engineer is the person that presented this tweet is an investor, and he invests in businesses, and he posted that a founder, if you ever come across a rare breed of engineer, grab them. They're called 10x engineers. And if you have a 10x engineer, as part of your first few engineers, you increase the odds of your startup success significantly. So then he's like, how do you spot a 10x engineer? And this is where things start to get a little bit controversial. And I personally think that the word 10x engineer is a little bit weird as well. Like, it's a weird thing to put on someone. Like, you're a 10x, that means you're 10 times better than that guy over there. Is that what that means?
Or is he just, like, is he just naming it 10x? Like, is 10x just
like
sound
you're
good?
just, that other guy is just such a scrub that he's not even like a 1x. Like, who's a 1x? Anyway, I personally don't like the 10x engineer thing because it perpetuates a lot of negative stigma for engineers, for developers, and specifically, obviously we're talking about web developers here, but there's a lot of other developers out there. But I'm just going to go through some of these labelings. So number one, 10x engineers hate meetings. They think it's a waste of time. Obvious things are being discussed. They attend meetings because the manager called for a staff meeting to discuss the features and status. Number two, timings in the office for 10x engineers is highly irregular. They tend to work when very few folks are around. If there is a crowd of all hands meeting, they are not visible. Most of them are late night coders and come to the office late. 3. 10x engineers' laptop screen background is typically black. They always change defaults. Their keyboard keys such as I, F, and X are usually worn out. Then A, S, and E. Like, this is super specific.
What is going I, F,
yeah,
and
like
S?
This guy's making like this guy's trying to make a hack for like people detecting, like people are gonna be like detecting people's keyboards, right? Let me check your keyboard. Does it have the keys
like
being worn out?
This almost sounds like as if you're trying to detect like a replicant in the freaking Blade Runner series.
I know.
Like,
it's a really weird way to put, and this is a lot of there's a lot of them here. So number 4. 10x engineers know every line of code that has gone into production. If a QA or support folks alert an issue, they know precisely where the fault or bug is and can fix it in the same hours versus the days it would take, I guess, for a regular 1x scrub.
Well, I'm gonna show myself the door on that, I think.
Yeah, like, get out of here. If you can't fix your own bug in less than a day, then you're essentially less than a human being.
Shut it down.
Yeah. Most of the 10x engineers are full stack engineers. For them, code is code. They don't care whether front end, back end, API, database, serverless, etc. I have rarely seen them doing UI work. It's a weird thing to throw in there too. It's like most of them can do everything, but they can't do UI work. Like, what? What's all right?
Like, why are they unable to do UI
so essentially,
work?
if you do UI work, you're a scrub. So I'm sorry, Matt, but according to Shekhar Kirani, you are not a 10x engineer.
Literally just went through a massive UI, so I just degraded myself on air.
Yeah, on air. Yeah. So 10x engineers can convert thought into code in their mind and write it in an iterative fashion. Given a product feature, they can write that entire feature in 1 or 2 sittings of 4 to 6 hours with a caffeinated drink without distraction. What a specific thing. Again, like, this guy must just know one guy that does this.
I was going to say, is just this describing
one man? The guy. This is his friend or something. Like, this guy has been an amazing coder. I'm just going to describe his life, and people should try to find him. You're going to get poached, man. So 10x engineers rarely look at help documentation of classes or methods. They know it in memory and can recall from memory. They write code at the same ease as writing English. No breaks, no pauses, just type.
Literally anyone could do that if you just wrote that stuff only, but like a bunch of people also do other tasks, like organizing stuff on paper.
A full stack engineer. Like, this guy's saying he can do back end and front end and not even look at documentation. I mean, this man's a god.
I'm flabbergasted.
Yep.
I have to remain silent in his presence.
Yeah. 10x engineers are always learning new frameworks, languages, ahead of everyone in the company. They are not afraid of anything new. If there is something new, example blockchain, they gobble up, set up, experiment before anyone is getting started. I mean, that just seems like it's just like some of these are logical, but they're not. I hate that he's classifying it as this like elite thing. You know what I mean? Like this is just like it's like I guess it's validating some people and then just knocking them down a little bit as you read because like oh man I do this, but then you get to the UI part and you're like oh man so I'm a scrub I guess, and it doesn't make sense to me that he's specifying this extreme specificity, and like a lot of people have gone on and been in support of this kind of thing right after he posted it. A lot of people have been against it obviously too, but there's been like a constant clash and battle. And then there's another one. 10x engineers are poor mentors as they can't teach others on what they do or parcel the work. They always think it always takes too long to teach or discuss with others. I would rather do it myself. They're poor. They also are poor interviewers. So like this one, it's essentially saying that the 10x engineer is socially awkward. So if you find a socially awkward engineer or a social awkward developer, get him. Get that guy. If you can't stare at you in the eyes, whew, there we go. You got yourself a 10x engineer. That's a really weird boast.
I mean, it like some of these make sense though. It's like I could definitely see a person in which he's creating that does check all these boxes. Like a person who is a no nonsense person who like codes late at night, comes in the office, doesn't really like to talk to people, literally like codes at work, goes home, codes at home, doesn't really answer emails other than to say like yes this is done or yes I'll do this kind of thing, like very to the point, very utilitarian. I can definitely see the person that they're laying out here, but at the same time it's like there's also good engineers that aren't this. Now I don't think he actually was saying like you're a scrub if you're not this. Like I mean we're just kind of making fun there, but like at the same time it's like
it's a weird. This is
like,
a
this
really
is weird.
specific
Like this is a really
classification.
weird. Yeah, like because there are people out there that are, for example, socially awkward and code a lot, but they could be also bad at doing it as well. Like what if they're just bad at coding? You just be bad at that.
For the most part, that's not a good thing to promote because you need someone that is able to teach the code that they're writing. Otherwise, you're literally are one accident away from losing your entire company. That's what he's essentially promoting, the fact that you should have one guy that knows absolutely everything about your code, and he should be the one that's doing absolutely everything. And he shouldn't even teach anyone. He's saying that this is a good thing. Like people should be investing in startups that have this man. I would run away from anything that has that man.
Well, the thing is like this kind of sounds like the guy who like. You remember at Google I/O a couple years ago, and it was a couple years ago, so I apologize if I'm misquoting this. But remember how they were talking about the Google Assistant? And they were trying to they were talking about how how does AI work? Like how does machine learning work? And they were actually saying that they were virtually coding neurons, and that only certain developers could do it. I remember them saying something along those lines. Again, don't quote me directly. I may be off base here, but I remember them saying that that they were virtually coding neurons, and they only had I don't know, 5 neurons or something, very small amount of neurons done. It takes a lot of time and it takes certain people. I wonder if that's kind of where he's at, where he's like, if we need an algorithm that's like super complex or what have you, this is the type of person that has these traits that to the letter. This is the type of person that is a no fluff, like, okay, we need to dig in and literally build this neuron, which is it's like extremely complex. Like that is extremely complex.
But he's not saying that. He's saying that you should base your company entire product on this one person, not a feature like that. But what you're saying right now seems like a complicated, like you'd outsource a complicated algorithm to this man.
Yeah.
And he would give you back that complicated algorithm, and then you just use it. And if you ever need to do anything to that complicated algorithm, you'd outsource that. But that little piece would be something that he only knows because he's this special person that can write that algorithm. And there are people out there that are brilliant at writing these super efficient algorithms, and I fully admit that. Like, I'm not one of those people. I can't write like an extremely efficient sorting algorithm. I'm not really good at that. I can use an extremely efficient sorting algorithm, and I understand how it works, but I'm not a person that can go out there and write a brand new sorting algorithm from scratch that can outperform current ones or even perform like in the top 10 or whatever. I've tried it before. It doesn't work for me. But essentially that's different because there are people like that, and there are people that like maybe reach some of these things, but a company shouldn't base their entire code base on that one person. That's what I'm saying is wrong. It's a very big mistake, this last one that I read, like that can't teach others or is willing to even teach others and thinks that that's a waste of time, is a huge problem. Like if you see that in a developer, that's something you should run away from as a startup investor and stuff like that. Because if that person, and he goes on to say that if that person moves out of that company and goes to a different company, your company is done.
Is that what he
Like
said?
that's it.
Do you put that in the requirements?
His requirements are that they are poor mentors and can't teach others on what they do and parcel out
Oh,
the
I
work.
see what you're saying. So it's like they can't even transfer those skills over to other teams or what have you. It's like
Yeah,
he's not only the lead developer, he might literally be the only developer on your staff.
correct. Like they're not willing to go to meetings, so they're not willing to explain what they're doing, right? They're not willing to teach others, they're not willing to mentor. He's like literally, so whatever, if he's in charge of the whole stack, which he's saying in one of these points, he's saying he's a full stack engineer, so he's in charge of the entire process. And
Oh
if
my
he's in charge of
lord.
all the code, and if there's an issue, he's the one that solves it. You're riding on one person, one man or woman, I for your entire livelihood. Like you can't. That is the. And he's suggesting for people to invest in a company that has this. You know what I mean? Like this is my issue with it. Not the fact that there are people out there like this. There 100% are, and there was one person in our university program that would fit this bill very well, and he was very intelligent and really good at writing code, and he could write it really quick, and he could write an algorithm, but he was not good at working in a team. You know what I mean? Like he was just not. Like I worked with him on a project. Him and I were some of the strongest coders. And it was tough. Like we finished it, but it was a very tough process because he writes code without thinking about another person reading it. And to teach it, it's not like he can't do it. Like it's one of those things where he's just like, it's again, like he says in here, it takes too long to teach or discuss with others. I would rather just do it myself.
Well, he
That's
he
the
just
way
understands it. Like it's to the
yeah,
point where like he understands it so well. It's like we obviously understand English a bunch, but like I would have a
yeah,
hell of a time trying to teach somebody. Like I'd be like, I don't know. Like I don't even know where I would start teach you in English.
yeah,
Like what do I teach you? I don't know. Do I teach you
exactly.
verbs? Like I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
just teach you from the beginning, but like you can teach like a word here and there. But yeah, I agree. Like with teaching from the beginning of English, that would be really tough. And that's essentially what they're saying. Like they don't want to take that time to do it. And that's, in my sense, that's one of the biggest mistakes of this whole entire like 10x engineer spiel. So I'm not even done yet though. So
Oh my
there's
lord.
more here. 10x engineers don't hack things. They write quality code and know exactly how the code has to evolve and have a mental model of overall code structure. They write at most one design document and the rest is in code. So that means that they essentially don't plan their coding. Like they don't do any sort of like, I guess they do some requirements gathering. He said they do one design document, but they don't do any sort of other planning. And then they just start to code and they code their entire thing. I mean, I've done that myself and I've seen that being done, but I don't think that should be standard practice, especially for a company that's getting investors. Because again, when you're an investor and you're investing in a company, you want it to succeed and you want it to succeed regardless of who's there. Like you can't rely on one person, one all-star, unless he's the owner of the company, I guess, and then you're relying on him anyway. But unless he's the owner of the company, if he's just an employee there, you can't rely on that person to be the only one that knows everything. This is not like it's a core structural problem of this thought process. So next thing here, this is the last one that he wrote, and a bunch of other people have obviously added more. But 10x engineers rarely job hunt or move out of the company. They move out because you make their life miserable with the process, meetings, training, and other non-value added activities. If you come across them, hold on to them, celebrate them. Like,
Like the thing is it's like it like to be fair to this to whoever is like writing this, it's like they're not exactly insulting other people. Like they're not actually like saying
no,
like you guys are idiots. Like if you are a UI guy, you're an idiot or anything like that. Because obviously the UI needs to get done. At the end of the day here, obviously stuff like that. Um, but it's like it like he like to me he's literally like describing one person to me. Like
yes, exactly.
honestly, if you worked with this guy, like if you worked like with this guy that wrote this tweet or this Twitter, it's a Twitter thread, right? If you
Yep.
worked with this guy that wrote this Twitter thread, and you worked like in that team that he's describing, you'd be like, oh, that's like Jim, like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
Jim, like
definitely,
that's who it
100%.
is.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's Jim over there. He's in the corner and he doesn't come out,
yeah.
until nighttime or whatever. Like you know what I mean? Like whatever. Like I'm not trying to make fun of Jim there, the proverbial Jim, but like It's like he's describing one person too crazily.
Yeah,
Like he
and
doesn't
one
describe the
scenario
desk
too.
layout. Like, does the guy have a messy desk? Does he not?
How yeah, and how complicated is the infrastructure? Like, is it something that one guy can handle? Maybe that's what he's talking about. Like, it's a very specific person for a very specific scenario. Like, he literally probably has one startup that's doing really well, and it has like a team of like 2 or 3 people, and one of those people is Jim, like you're saying, this one 10x engineer, and it's doing really, really well. But this man is not a tech, he's not a tech lead, you know what I mean? So he doesn't fully understand the technical aspects of it. So he thinks that this person is making this super complicated thing happen. Maybe he is, but it's not transferable to another company, is what I'm saying.
Right.
You can't just typecast the same exact scenario and just be like, all right, just take Jim and just clone him, and maybe he'll fit into Microsoft and have him run Office 365. Do it up.
Yeah, because honestly, like the way he's describing this, right? It's like let's hypothetically say you have an app where like it does function 100%, but the UX is terrible, right? The user experience is just awful. If the user
Yeah.
experience is just god awful, chances are your UX guy, whether he's the UX almost a UX developer, but the UX, like the whoever's doing the UX reports, like usually it's the UI developer that does it, right? At least in our experience. And so like the UX UI guy is there, and he'll go through and he'll do an analysis. Maybe he has a test group, whatever. Depends on how serious the app is. And let's say that app works perfectly, like it does everything that they originally said. However, it's a pain in the ass to use. It kind of sounds to me like this type of person, right? Because they don't want to talk to people, because this and that, they would look and be like, well, if it's the criteria on my original document, right? And so like I don't care kind of thing. Like he'd be like, well, if it's the criteria on my original document, like why would I change how this feature works when the feature works? Like it kind of sound like to me this 10x stereotype is very much like an extremely utilitarian person. And with that one startup, like let's hypothetically say this person that tweeted it out has one startup with Jim that works in this position that is doing extremely well. Well, that's great. But what happens if that app that Jim is working on had a really bad UX? What happens if the UI was really bad? What happens if they released it at a bad time? What happens if they released it on a platform that like Jim hypothetically doesn't really read the news all the time? It doesn't really check out that type of stuff. What happens if they release it on a platform that was dying? Like what if they release it on BlackBerry World? Like
Well, one of the points here is he can't, like, he only learns new frameworks, and only, like, he knows every new framework essentially that's out there and immediately picks it up without even any
well,
effort.
then it's the same thing. Then what if he goes down a framework tunnel that doesn't even go anywhere? Like what happens if that framework falls apart in a year? Now you got a whole bunch of code there, and it's like, oh, it'll evolve. Well, evolve to what? A whole new thing? So it has to be ripped up and redone?
Yeah. Well, the thing that I don't understand is he can't do UI work. Like this guy specifically says that Jim can't do UI work.
Yeah.
Right. But how? And then he also can't go to meetings.
Yeah. So he can't go to meetings. He can't be in a team. He
can't communicate with people. So that means that the UI developer has to work around this guy's or girl, like the Jim's methods, and he has no say. So Jim will be like, well, we'll get the user to click 18 different times to get to this thing because it's more efficient in code. And the UI developer is like, well, we can't do that. And Jim's like, well, I can't listen to you because I'm not actually going to attend that meeting.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say. I'm not going to teach you anything. So you're not going to understand it. So you are no longer, like, you can't talk to me, because if you talk to me, I'm going to quit, and then the entire company is going to fall apart. That's essentially what this man's saying. Like, you can't base a company. Like, I agree in one specific scenario, maybe this Jim is perfect for that scenario.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be that case. I'm going to say it's going to be leaning more towards him not, like, the Jim not working out. But regardless, like, it's a weird it's a weird thing to happen on Twitter. Like, it's a weird thing for someone to tweet, in my opinion. And then the war that started after is even weirder. And I'm just trying to, like, there's a lot of memes associated with it. Like, one right here is what about a 10,000 engineer, and it's just Chuck Norris looking.
Damn the internet.
Damn the internet, exactly. And then there are people going on about, like, the more points. Like, a 10x engineer doesn't believe in computers, only software. They only eat freshly printed pages of source code from the latest version of Linux kernels. A 10x engineer is outside your house right now and holding a laptop over their head like a boombox. Like there's a lot of those kinds of things. Like a 10x engineer doesn't have hair, but Ethernet cable snakes out of their skull. They can quote passages from Agile Manifesto from heart while humming the sound of a MacBook makes while it boots. You will know them because they're in the house right now. Oh my God, run.
You know what's damn that comment. You know what this like? You know what this all sounds like to me? Like the more we talk about this, the more it sounds like the person that literally doesn't do anything but work.
Yeah.
And it almost sounds like it's like a person that's like super antisocial. And like this is my interpretation of it. It's like a person that is super antisocial, so therefore has no social life, and as a result found something he's good at, which is fine. And then as a result, like as a result of that, like as a resultant, if you will, um, to use a 10x term, as a resultant, you like this person doesn't have any social life, doesn't do anything, like doesn't have a life, you know, essentially, and literally just codes things, and literally that's it. Like that's it.
Yep.
Full stop. Doesn't have hobbies. Doesn't do anything else. Just 10x engineer is literally like he show. Which to be fair, if we could do that, like if we were just able to say like that's it, like I'm only gonna work on the hat podcast. I'd be a 10x podcast host because I could literally be talking every day, 12 hours, 8 hours a day, and so I'd be really freaking good at it. Eventually you would get good at it. Eventually you would master it. Talent plays in there. Yes, hooray for that. Hit me up on Twitter like I always say. But at the end of the day, I would be a heck of a lot better if I did this 8 to 12 hours a day than, 1 or 2, 3 hours a week, something like that, right? That's just the reality behind it. And so like this type of person just sounds like a person that's not a 10x term. A person who doesn't actually have a healthy work-life balance. Essentially, to bring it into the trendy terms, like it doesn't sound like this person has a good work-life balance. It sounds like this person is almost trapped by their own work because, well, maybe they like it, whatever. If you want to be a person that works that much, that's fine. But like, that's what it kind of sounds like. Do you know what this person? You know what this person sounds like? You know what this sounds like? This sounds like Elon Musk.
Yep.
Because he's not very sociable. Like, I mean, like he does go out in public and that type of thing, but he doesn't exactly, at least in my opinion, change his like how he talks. You know what I'm trying to say? Like he doesn't have a presenter like appeal. Like he just comes out and talks about what he's doing. He's an engineer. He knows what he's doing. The guy was sleeping in Tesla or whatever, right? Like he is an engineer and he'll talk about what he's doing. He's friendly enough. There's no problem there. But he's not exactly a presenter. Like he is not a presenter, period. Full stop. He's not Steve Jobs, full stop.
Yep.
There's a reason why Bill Gates and Satya Nadella don't exactly go on stage all that much, whereas they did. There's that one presenter guy that they have now, that like little mini Steve Jobs. I never remember his name.
He's great. I don't know his name, but he's amazing.
But like he's good at that. But he probably isn't a 10x engineer because he actually runs around and knows what people want to hear and knows what people want to like, knows what is important to people. I would say that a 10x engineer is literally an inverted that, like a completely opposite to that.
Yeah. I would agree. I mean, like it's a really everyone knows that obviously if you put all your effort into something like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and all those people, like they went and spent all their lives like doing something and they got a good result. Not everyone will get a good result, but essentially like they gave their life for that, right? Most of the time to do that, you have to really sacrifice a lot and stuff like that. So these 10x engineers are like, I don't really like to label it as a 10x engineer, but these super engineers are
so upgrades it from a 10x to a
upgrades,
super engineer.
Yeah, these super whatever it is. Like I just it's a weird thing to put out there.
I think it's because there's a number associated with it. So now we
exactly.
have a way of measuring it.
Yeah, measuring. Yeah. So it's a weird way to classify it because I don't understand why the fact of not being able to communicate your knowledge to someone gives you more value. That's what I find the most kind of strange about this whole situation. Like if he gave a good like reasonable list, I think of a person that could lead a team of developers and could design a system and be able to articulate it and have it be like maintainable in the future. If he gave that kind of thing, I don't think there would have been I don't think it wouldn't have even blip on anyone's radar. But the fact that he chose to make an someone that's antisocial and not willing to even communicate with human beings kind of thing as this person that every company should seek out. That's what is the controversy, right? Like, that's the controversial part of this. Everything else makes sense. Yes, this Jim guy is obviously brilliant and stuff like that and knows what he's doing.
Nothing against Jim, but like at the same time, it's like people skills are required for many parts of a company.
Yeah, for most parts of a company. And again, like in a specific scenario that this guy's probably in, he probably has it fully down pat and everything's going well and he's making tons of money. But I would not put your entire career on the line to become a 10x engineer and literally like skip meetings because you want to be labeled as one of these people. Like, that's what I'm worried about. This is my biggest worry, is that the listeners out there or the people reading this tweet and this guy, is investing real money into people like this, are going to go out there and be like, well, maybe I need to be antisocial and try to, only focus on code. Like, I don't think that that's the right move. You have to be well-rounded, like to have a long career, to be able to do this for a long time, to not burn out, to be able to provide a good solid code base for the future. You have to be well-rounded. You have to be able to go to these meetings. Yes, a lot of meetings are useless, but that's getting better. Like, more and more we're becoming more and more like concise with our meetings, like especially with the teams that I'm working with. We're having very concise meetings. We're catching each other on any sort of tangents. We're having individual one-to-one sessions if we need to have a tangent and stuff like that. We're not doing that in a meeting. We're doing our best we can. Obviously, there's going to be some redundancy and some I wouldn't say uselessness, but not efficiency down. Like, efficiency will be downgraded because of meetings, but we're trying our best
time away from working on the goal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Time away from working on the goal. Meetings are definitely going to affect that, but they're definitely 100% required to articulate where you're at, how you get better, how to pass your skills on, stuff like that. Like, you need to be able to mentor. You need to be able to go to meetings. That's 100% something that you want to look for in an engineer. You do not want to look for a quote unquote 10x engineer. That's going to be my closing statement on this, because I don't think there's much else to say other than we can read a bunch more memes, because there's a lot more.
Well, I guess if I was to do a closing statement, I would say that if you want to be a 10x engineer, I personally say go for it. But at the same time, it's one of those things where I'm not going to do that, and I kind of think that a person doesn't choose to be. I think it's a person who just is antisocial, just is really smart, just doesn't like talking to people, really goal oriented, right? Whether that be from nature or nurture, what have you. I don't think it's a person that necessarily chose one day to be like, you know what, that's it. I'm going to be a 10x, or like, and maybe you not even label it like that, but they didn't say like, you know what, I'm done talking to people. I'm not talking to people, and I don't want to talk to people, and I'm not going to these meetings. I don't think that people choose to be in that particular situation. Again, in my opinion, I think it's more or less like they were just like, born that way or nurtured that way. That they were isolated or whatever leads to that. I'm not a psychologist, but I think that it's more of that's the type of person, not that they chose to be like that. I didn't choose to have a messy desk, but I have a messy desk. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
Just the way it is. So I'm going to leave you with this.
Oh, no.
To summon a 10x engineer, you must walk up a flight of stairs backwards while holding a candle in a darkened house. As your foot touches the final step, repeat free as in speech and free as in beer. My new startup needs a 10x engineer.
Well, for the listener up there, I have my hand out. Just my hand up because I didn't know what else to say. So anyway, as a closing note, thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to this Tidbit episode. Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing on the platform of your choice. You can follow us on the socials via @HTML All the Things. That's on Facebook and Instagram. You can also follow us on Twitter, which is @HTML Everything. We are on Medium and we're on GitHub. And remember that we are also on Patreon, and that's patreon.com/HTML All the Things. Check out the tiers that give that a go. And with that being said, many thanks to our $3 tier patrons. That's Sean from RabbitWorks JavaScript. You can find him at youtube.com/RabbitWorks JavaScript. Again, Works is spelled WERKS. And we also would like to thank Garrick from Local Path Computing and Web Design. You can find him at localpathcomputing.com. We'd also like to thank Craig, aka Cosworth, and last but not least, Ryan Gatchell from Blue Black Digital. You can find him at blueblackdigital.com. Feel free to leave a comment or a review on the platform that you are listening to this on, and we are signing off.